Good, Mike. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. It's hard to evaluate what the impact in the last 12 years for this medical school to be in our city is, but it certainly is reflected in the things that you do in the community, and we know how involved you are. I've seen people here today that I see in many other areas of the city, other volunteer groups and other things, and so it's really a privilege to be here. I want to do a couple of things. I want to give you just a 30-second update on some city things, and then I want to tell you a little bit about how I got involved in United Way. Mike asked me to visit a little bit of that, and I've been doing that a little bit in my chores as mayor, but also got a little more involved in United Way this year. So, first of all, we heard last week that we expect the funding, the private funding, about $60 million to come together for our hotel downtown. That will allow us then to begin the parking garage next door, which is funded through the revenue users that are in that parking garage. So we expect to have a 300-room hotel, 5-star basically Wyndham Hotel downtown, with a 850-space parking garage just south of it. Now the hotel will be where the Globe News parking lot is right now. And we're dealing with, during the construction, it'll be difficult to park, but we've got some places to augment that. We're finishing with Coca-Cola, their move out to the industrial park where Benny Keith is, Centerport, and that property situation is still in exchange. It's not quite finished, but it's very close to be finished. So we can talk about it publicly. We think it will be finished. Then that will start the MPEV, which I always call a ballpark, but I'm not supposed to. The reason we don't call it a ballpark is it's 57 nights of scheduled ball games a year and 150 nights of other events. As it's been proposed, it's about 4,500 fixed seats, 7,000, 8,000, depending on how it's configured, seats, with a 60-foot by 60-foot stage in the center of the outfield, of the field, that's removable for ball games. So 150 nights plus of other events at that event center. And that's what we think will propel. Let me just give you an analogy. Oklahoma City, about 14 years ago, voted through the taxpayers to put in $392 million worth of sales tax money into their downtown locations. And they said, here's a priority list of projects. It's either vote for this all or none. As we collect this money, ours will be done differently, but as we collect this money, we'll do this project, this one, this one. And they laid out the scope of what the city could be. Well, from that, if you haven't been to Oklahoma City in the last few years, it's unbelievable what's happened. The basic number is that $292 million of investment by taxpayers has paid off and been leveraged into, get this number, $315 billion worth of private investment. Now, we are in Oklahoma City, don't want to be. We're going to be a little different about this, but we'll have our own unique signature in what will happen with our downtown. Let me give you a number. In the last 20 years, downtown has not grown at all. The rest of the city has grown about 8 to 10% valuations on properties throughout the city. Downtown has grown about 1%, 1.5% over 20 years. Really, that's a regression. Didn't keep up with inflation or anything else. But in the last 2 years, the property values in downtown, and this is another misnomer that I'll correct. They say there's not many property owners in downtown. There's over 1,000 individual property owners in the tax reinvestment zone downtown. In that area, property values in the last 2 years have gone from a 2% increase over a 20-year period to a 37% increase in values. So we've issued $70 million in building permits downtown in the last 2 years. $70 million worth of permits. There's a Tootin' Totem going in right now with a 20,000 square foot area next to it. If you had a list, and sometime maybe we'll have that opportunity, but I want to go from that to tell you your city is healthy, your city's growing. We expect to grow 25,000 to 35,000 people in the next 10 years. That means 8,000 to 9,000 more jobs. Since 2008, we've created 6,000 jobs in our city. Bell Helicopter just announced a huge advancement because as military buys could go down, they now are going to produce a new state-of-the-art medium-lift helicopter, a 525, lifts 16 people out of oil rigs primarily, plus a crew of two. And they're going to build that in our city. We think we may pick up some other military applications as B-22 U.S. government contract runs down. They're out selling those to Saudi Arabia and other places now, and they're going worldwide with that. The Relentless built here. They're presenting it in China. Last week, they presented it in the Arab Emirate. The week before, these are private commercial helicopters, and those will all be built in Amarillo. We've gone from no production facilities with Bell to 1.5 million square feet of production area with Bell in the last 10 years. And it's just going to translate into solid jobs, well-paid jobs in our city, just like what you are able to do here with this facility. So let's jump over to United Way for a minute. You know, I don't think of myself as a charity case, but I'm going to give you a little history on me and United Way. And I will bet you, if you think while I'm telling you this story about your household and the household on either side of your family in your neighborhood, that somebody under those three roofs is presently using United Way and gaining a huge benefit, which benefits our community. Because I don't look on United Way as a charity. I think it's a community building agency that is the glue that ties our community together. It fills the gaps when something's missing. Let me tell you, and they change. United Way changed based on a volunteer effort of community folks that come together and say, that program's not as strong, we need to reevaluate, we need to beef it up, or we're going to cut you out. That happened with Maverick Club 2 years ago. Maverick Club today is vital because United Way said, you got to be responsible for the money we're giving you. And we want a stronger board, we want more developed programs, and we want an accounting for every penny you're spending. Maverick Club responded, and where it thought, many thought it might shut down. It's now serving over 200 kids. We just had a day of caring out there. We cleaned up 40 blocks in the neighborhood. People, volunteers, 300 or 400 people out there for the day, and they rebuilt it. Well, that's the kind of thing United Way does best. But they do things with Red Cross, and Red Cross is in flux right now. There's other agencies that are doing well. Jan Warner, I saw one of their buses as I pulled up today. So here's a picture for you. I'm at an age where my parents, parents in our age are getting older. My in-laws certainly were getting older. They passed recently, but they were enhanced by what agencies gave them in the final years of their life. Picture your parents with all their friends dying. You know, I get up now and I read those obituaries seriously now, not just to see if I'm in there, but to see which of my friends are there. And I've got a funeral today at 2 o'clock, a guy I thought would live forever, like we think will live. But they're losing their friends. So Jan Warner picks them up, takes them to an adult daycare center, and they make new friends and new acquaintances, and they enrich their lives, and they do activities. And if you haven't been out to Jan Warner, I challenge you to go out there and visit. It's unbelievable the way the quality of life is improved by that agency that's funded by United Way and very unique to our community. The bridge is another one that is unique to our community. Many of you in this healthcare field know exactly what the bridge does. But for young children that have been abused horribly and have a horrible trauma in their life, they take those kids and gently, with the proper people there to deal with this, videotape what has happened to these children and give it to law enforcement agencies, and these children, in a way, begin to heal from a terrible trauma to them that will probably affect them for many, many years, if not lifetime. But it is mitigated a little bit rather than having to go 4 or 5 interviews and go into court. And our community created the bridge, and it's now a model for many other places, and it's funded by United Way. So it's things like that where we really fill the gap. If you decide to give to United Way, that's a personal choice. But let me tell you some ways that I've used United Way that are kind of surprising unless I really think back about it. I'm 18 years old. I'm in Vietnam. Haven't talked to home. So Mom's home with 8 brothers and sisters. My father had died when I was 15. I couldn't call him. They said, hey, Red Cross has got a Mars station. You write your mom and set up a time and you can call and talk to her. I didn't know it was a United Way deal. Red Cross is funded a lot by United Way. So I got on the phone. To me, it was an important phone call. To my mother, it was essential. Twice in 18 months. United Way did that for me. I'm not a charity case. I wasn't a charity case then. I'm not now. But I got a huge benefit because Red Cross supported United Way, and it was able to fill a gap in the community, a worldwide community at that point. Now that's all gone. The soldiers today, text or whatever. But United Way adapts as that changes. So then I come home, married in 1974. My wife and I had not had children in 1978, so we started looking into adopting. So we were in Albuquerque. We'd both gone to UNM, met there. Wanted to have kids, no luck. We'd gone to all the docs, done all the tests, everybody's frustrated, and we made that call to be a United Way agency and said it was in Santa Fe, it's Catholic Family Services. They were contracted with the state of New Mexico to do all infant adoptions. That's back when it was private adoptions in 1981. So we called, and 10 months later to the day, we had a little girl that changed our whole lives. God knew what he was doing when he didn't give us a child before that, because this girl has changed our lives. She's married now, has our 3 grandchildren. Our son, who came along naturally 13 months later, has a grandchild. And he really knew what he was doing when he had sort of arranged it that way. Now, I can't imagine how my life would be different if that hadn't happened. I can't even imagine it. But that came about because of the United Way agency. So while I'm not a charity case, we paid for the adoption, but that agency would not have survived without United Way there to support that. Now we go a few years later to us and Boy Scouts. So again, as a child, I loved Boy Scouts. I thought it was more fun. We got in a little trouble in Boy Scouts when I was a kid. We didn't have quite the adult supervision, and I decided that I would become more involved. But I really decided as an adult that I would follow my son in Boy Scouts, because we lost Boy Scouts. When I was the first class scout, the leader retired, nobody to replace him, and it was gone for us. And I regretted that all my young years. It was something I missed. So when my son got into Boy Scouts, I said, I'm going to stick with it, and I've been involved in the council level and somewhat to a regional and national level with Boy Scouts, and I see what it's doing. So let me give you one story about how Boy Scouts fills the gap. See, our council, that's the biggest donor to our council, United Way. We have to provide programs to kids that get them through their life better because they have received these programs. So United Way says, what are you doing for kids? We'll fund that program. Let me tell you about a result of one of those programs. I'm up in northern Colorado at a camp called Ben de la Tura, right near the Wyoming border, and my son's 11 years old. He comes to me. We were at camp for the week, and there's other adults helping him, but he came to me and he said, hey, Dad, that's the age when they don't know if they want to talk to you or not, but he says, hey, Dad, could you go on the camping merit badge deal with me? And I said, yeah, what's that? And he says, well, you got to come and camp overnight, but if we don't get another adult, we're not going to be able to camp overnight. I said, sure, I'll do that. Now, there's 2 directions at Camp Ben de la Tura, up and down. It's not north, south, east, and west. It's up and down. So we're headed the next night to a little pavilion to learn about how this camping experience would work. And we're going up this hill, and my son's way ahead of me. We're looking down. There's a pavilion with a lot of kids gathered underneath, learning about how to go camping. And all these boys, 10, 11 years old, getting excited. They all had gear, and they were talking. And they said, okay, tomorrow night, bring all your gear ready to go camping. We're going to check you out. We're going to go camping. So bring your sleeping bag, bring your backpack, bring your canteen, bring all your stuff. Okay, and these kids are all excited. One little kid off on the side was sort of dejected. You could tell he didn't have much equipment with him. And his scoutmaster put his hand on his shoulder and said, don't worry, we'll take care. So the next night, we're headed out to do this camping, and it was early, and we're headed up those hills, and my son's way ahead of me, and I'm puffing and puffing. I get to the top of the hill, and there's all these kids, again, down in this pavilion, gathered around this one boy. And this was the boy who the night before had nothing. And the scoutmaster had worked with him that day, cut limbs from trees, bound them together, created a backpack frame, tied a little vinyl bag on it that you get back in my day from American Airlines in the 50s, or something like that, little vinyl backpack, and he tied his sleeping bag on there, his sleeping bag consisted of a couple of blankets rolled up, tied on his canteen, tied everything together, put some straps, had it on the kid's back, and every one of those kids that had $200-300 worth of equipment had dropped it and were surrounding this kid and making him the star of the show. And that kid, that day, was higher than those Rocky Mountains we were in because of what Scouts gave him. And it changed his life because he had that ability. And that program wouldn't have been there for us, for my son to receive what he learned that night, or for that child had United Way not funded their program. So when you talk to me about United Way, don't call it a charity. It's a community building agency that fills the gap and finds the wounds in the community and provides the service. They do it in a dignified way and offer people some hope. And That's why I've gotten involved in United Way, because I think of myself as a receiver of United Way, and I don't think of myself as a charity case. So as you're making your decision, think about how it's affecting not just you directly or your neighbor. I was at work at John Chandler Ford, and a guy came up to me and said, you know, boss, I really can't read. And we took him through the 211 group and got him to the Literacy Council, and he learned to read. I had another guy 10 years later, boss, I got a problem. It's drinking. It's tearing up my marriage. I need help. Very privately, we took him to the alcohol rehabilitation group that's funded by United Way. So think of all the ways. We've given a lot of examples. And I would bet you, if you go back to my premise in the beginning, that it's absolutely true, that if you look at your household, or one on either side, you're getting a huge benefit from United Way. Please help sustain it. You'll be given an opportunity to give. It's your choice. But think about that choice and how it's affecting our whole city. It's a privilege to be your mayor. I mean, it's an unbelievable privilege to serve in a community that supports things like that. So thank you. I'm always available. I put my cell phone number on my cards. The city manager doesn't want me doing that, but it's there. And I'll get it before I'm out of the car. But if you need to call me, it's really easy. You know the 679 prefix that's on so many cell phones here in town? Well, the rest of mine, coincidentally, was given to me 10 years ago, is 0911. I don't know how that happened, but you can reach me really easy. I don't know how that happened. Thanks for this opportunity. The worst thing about my talk today is I'm the only thing standing between you and the food, and that's really not a good position to be in. Thank you for having me today.